Let's jump right in.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Excellent. What are some of China's most valuable ecosystems that are at risk due to the current state of the climate crisis?
So China is one of the biodiversity-rich countries. At the beginning, I heard that China is the number 8 of 24 countries. There's also number 8. China is ranking number 8 of the top 12 biodiversity-rich countries in the world. However, China's biodiversity system is also at risk. This is also following the global trend. Globally, over the past 40 years, we've been tracking over 3,000 vertebrate species of their 14,000 populations. And we found out that over the past 40 years, they're declining. They're declining 58%. While at the same time, the human impact on nature is growing. So the biodiversity in China and in other places in the world are suffering from the loss of habitat because of human development. At the same time, the carbon dioxide emitted into the air also come back to impact the species on their livelihood. So in China, one of the most critical ecosystem is Yangtze River, which is the mother river of China, ranking number 3 in the world, and have the 20% of China land have about 1/3 of the population and 40% of China's GDP. But from the south area to the estuary area of the Yangtze River, they are all facing the impact of climate change. The vulnerability study we have done in 2009 showed that Yangtze is getting warmer and drier. So from the south area in the mountains, the glaciers are melting and then causing the degradation of grassland. And in the estuary area, the seawater intrusion due to climate change has impacted people's drinking water. And in the middle of Yangtze River, that's where a lot of biodiversity happening. Like the panda, which is the treasure of China, panda habitat is in that area. But they are losing their habitat because due to the climate change, temperature rising, Yangtze in general has reached about 0.7 degree over the pre-industry level. The temperature increasing changed the growth of the bamboo, which is the food of panda. So if the trend will continue, panda will facing greater pressure in finding their new habitat, find new food. So this is the precious ecosystem that are facing in China. But this is not the end of the story. In China, many players are working together trying to combat this climate change. For example, as a WWF working with China's State Forestry Administration and also over 250 protected areas in the Yangtze River Basin, we built a Yangtze River wetland network together. So we learn together, we share together, we really adapting to the climate change together. In the process, we've been connected to over 50 lakes back to the Yangtze River to ensure the ecosystem, the hydrology of the river flowing continue. But this is one effort of many. Challenges are still huge. More effort will be needed, but there is hope.
Well, that's great to hear. I want to talk a little bit more about those partnerships, which are so crucial to the success of WWF and other organizations, in particular the one that you've developed with the Climate Reality Project. Tell me a little bit about that and the work that you're doing there.
Sure. WWF believe in partnership because together everything's possible. Together we can. So we work with the partners that cross government, business, companies, civil society, and other NGOs. Well, we are really happy to develop this very mutual beneficial partnership with Climate Reality because we do have a common goals. And in this huge challenge of climate change we're facing together, we can only work hand in hand, then we can see some changes. We already seeing the power of civil society. Vice President Al Gore mentioned about the Paris Agreement. And when we are reaching the Paris Agreement, that's also when the civil society have come together to really make a big change in the history to call for the government to reach agreement to take action on the climate change. So this is one of the showcase of the power of the civil society. The other example I can give is that Earth Hour. This one is WWF initiated in 2003. Now it's spread over more than 170 countries in the world. Secretary General of UN Ban Ki-moon has once said, this is one of the largest environmental movement, coordinated and initiated by NGO, by civil society. So this is a work that we see. This is combined together, and together we can make the changes that we want to see.
I want to talk a little bit about South-to-South cooperation now. This is, of course, an initiative to bring together the countries in the global South developing countries to exchange knowledge, resources, technologies. How has China's participation not only helped China, but also those developing countries?
Yes, China itself is a developing country. For example, the carbon emission that China has emitted, which Vice President Al Gore showing you, which is the #1 in the world, the study shown that about 25% of those carbon emission was due to the production of the products used by other parts of the world, by exported product. So China is now itself going through this process of industrialization. And now, with the more of a heavy industry moving out of China, so what China has learned in this process will be very applicable to those countries who are having this similar development path. So what China is doing will be critical, because China is the one just gone through this development process, which others developing countries are going. And most importantly, China is calling for find a new way of development. In the Chinese word called ecological civilization, basically build a future where people can be go through the prosperity, but within the means of the one planet. And this is what China can contribute to the world. And what we have seen, China is doing that. In the field of combating climate change, China has put $3.1 billion into the climate South collaboration climate fund, trying to help other developing countries, other southern countries, to build their capacity, to learn the way to mitigate and adapt to the climate change. I think this is a process China has done. Many experience that China has gone through, has learned in this development process, will be applicable to other southern countries, because similar challenges are facing, similar development stage, we are all together. So therefore, what we like to see what China is achieving will be greatly benefiting to other southern countries who are going through a similar development stage as China is doing. So we are happy to be part of this South cooperation through our wide network of all over the world, over 100 countries we've been working with. So we like to be part of this enhanced South-South collaboration, so that we can work for a future where man and nature can live in harmony.
That's an amazing vision. Given that China is a major industrial hub for commerce and manufacturing, and as Vice President Gore outlined, you've already made significant strides in the area of renewable energy. But what other initiatives in sustainability, and specifically those towards reaching the Paris Climate Agreement, have you made in China?
So China is a country that is very serious to its international commitment. And what we have seen in China, to see that China has put energy target into its 5-year plan, there are many policies, measures are taken to increase the energy efficiency, to reduce the energy demand, to increase the renewable, which Vice President Al Gore in his presentation has already shown. So I just give one example. So industry sector consume about 80% of energy in China. And then we also know on the motors, the machines using motors, also using about 70% of the industry energy consumption. So therefore, WWF has worked with our green industry transformation pilot, Zhenjiang City, trying to really tackle the increasing the efficiency of motors in their city. So I can give you a few numbers. They spent about 500 million RMB over the 3.5 years to retrofit about 500 million megawatts of the motors. Guess what is the return? Return is that they gain about 500 million RMB saving of energy cost every year. So it's about a 400% of payback, return on investment on that. So we like to see this kind of both economic gain, but also reduced of the energy demand, and which also means reduced carbon emission. We like to see this more and more pilots growing and mushrooming all around China and even all around the world, so that we can have a final result of reduced carbon emission. And this is just one example. What we have seen in China is that over the past 2 years, we already seen that the total coal consumption in China has already leveling or even decreasing. So this is a good sign that indicating the effort that China has put in, not only Chinese government, but also business and NGOs like WWF. The effort has shown the results. We just like to see more of that downward trending continuously, and then we have reaching one day an absolute carbon emission reduction in China.
Continuing on that downward trend, what are the challenges that remain as far as moving forward towards an even cleaner energy economy, and how do you overcome those challenges?
Sure. So the picture I've been just picked is just one picture. Of course, behind that, with the country size, the population size of China, there's a huge challenges as well. So just give example, what challenge is facing now is that due to the slowdown of the economy, and then China has a lot of excessive manufacturing capacity, and those some are obsolete, some are really less energy efficient. And we also know that China is also going through the coal reliance industry. So China is heavily reliant on coal. Although reduced 2% to 65% of reliance on coal, however, this is still heavy reliance on coal. And then we also facing the challenge of the renewable energy produced through wind and solar facing a curtailment into the grid. So that's also a challenge. We couldn't really fully realize the potential of the renewable energy can give us. And also the industry structure with a heavy industry holding a bigger portion of the industry, and that also slowing down China's overall increase of energy efficiency. And we also see whether we have a financial flow or financial policy that can help not only invest into the renewable, but also divest from fossil fuel. So those are all the challenges we're facing, and this, we cannot work alone to solve that. This needs both the top political willingness of really changing the way of developing, and also the company to increase their social responsibility, increase their taking action towards reducing carbon emission, also including general public, to both call for government and company to reduce carbon emission, but also each individual public to take action ourselves by not maybe driving, but reduce driving by going to work through the public transportation, etc., to make a great effort to overcome this challenge.
Dr. Li, thank you for sharing your insights with us today.